We were lucky enough to come in here to Vets Memorial in Columbus, Ohio for this exhibit from Full Metal Jacket with the photos from set by Matthew Modine. And we got to interview
That's right.
Matthew Modine.
Matthew Modine, the nicest actor that I've met in a while.
How in the hell did you get Stanley to agree to let you take photos behind the scene? He's so private about that, especially his creative process.
Well, just the first part of what you were talking about, we're making a documentary right now that I wanted to call Full Metal Rashomon, because Rashomon's a story about, like, if something happened here.
The four versions of the story from different perspectives.
Versions. So, because when you talk to people about Stanley, everybody has a kind of different story. So that's why I thought Rashomon. But we're calling it Modern Art Masterpiece. And it's really good, but it's still interviewing people from the Grips and Electric to the makeup artist, everybody that we could find that worked on Full Metal Jacket, to hear their story about Stanley and what the experience of working on the film was. And it is a Rashomon, because Stanley was a different person to every person he met. He would sort of size you up and determine what your level of intelligence was and speak to you on that level. And I will say this about Stanley, that he understood that there's different levels of experience and intelligence. And the only time I ever saw him get mad wasn't because somebody wasn't smart and didn't make a right decision. It was when they didn't do their best. That's all he wanted. So if the best you could do was this, but you didn't do that, that's when he would lose his shit and get angry and fire you. You had to do your best all the time. The second part of your question was, how did I get permission? So I had a Rolleiflex camera, medium format Rolleiflex camera that a friend of mine gave me that knew of Stanley's photography background. And he said, if you learn how to use this medium format camera, there could be a way to break the ice and start a friendship with Kubrick. So I taught myself to use it, and I was always kind of presenting it to him when I was around him, when we were doing rehearsals. And finally one day he said, what are you doing with that old piece of junk camera? And I said, what are you talking about? This is a Rolleiflex medium format. I know what it is. Listen, if you're gonna take pictures on my set, this is the camera you should get. And it was this new Minolta autofocus camera, which I couldn't afford, but I bought because something important that he said was, if you're going to take pictures on my set, that he was giving me entree and permission to document my experience of working on his set and keep a diary, which is in that photograph over there. And there's a picture of it there. Yeah.
The next thing is, in terms of casting, there's a couple of rumors that I wanted to see what you can confirm or deny if this is true or not, which was supposedly your part was set to be Anthony Michael Hall.
Yes.
But it was like financial negotiations, I think, fell apart.
Stanley Kubrick is interested in you in this for a role in this Vietnam biopic he's doing.
Holy shit.
I could say in hindsight it was about money, but it wasn't. It was just a crazy drawn out thing.
Yeah, I think Anthony's father was managing him, and he wanted $1 million for Anthony to do the film, which I think today Anthony would pay $1 million to be in the film. And Stanley said, there's no way that I'm going to do that. But because what he wanted everybody in the film to be 18 years old, because he wanted to show like how insane that is to send these children, through boot camp and off to war when they're, just barely out of high school, and what does that look like? But he said that it was difficult to find good actors that were 18, 19 years old anyway.
And the length of the shoots that he's notorious for, 18 to 20, they would have aged noticeably.
Yeah. So it didn't work out with Anthony. And
then there was the rumor about Val Kilmer, that Val Kilmer approached you, and that's how you found out about the movie?
Yeah. I was with a good friend of mine, David Allen Greer, and we were having breakfast, and there was a person over David's shoulder. David was sitting in front of me, and he was sitting over there, and he was clearly telling me to go F myself. And I said to David, I said, unless that's an actor learning a monologue or a guy with Tourette's, he's clearly telling me to go fuck myself. And David looked over his shoulder. He goes, oh, that's Val Kilmer. He's a really nice guy. I didn't know who Val Kilmer was at that time because we were all starting
Pretty early.
out. Yeah, and so David knew him, and he went over and talked to him. And he waved me over, and I said, hi, I'm Matthew Modine. And he goes, yeah, I know who you are. I'm sick of you. It's in the Full Metal Jacket diary. And he, talked about that I was doing the film. And I said, I'm not, because you had to do a videotape audition and send it to Stanley. And that was really difficult to do at the time. And Val had done it. And Val did a really extensive audition. I mean, he got a costume, he went in a river, had somebody filming it. He went full on. And according to Leon Vitali, it was a pretty good audition. I don't know why Val didn't get cast in the film, but I called my manager, and he said he didn't know anything about it. I said, look, I know he makes his movies with Warner Brothers, and I'd just done Vision Quest, which was a Warner Brothers film, and Alan Parker was in London editing Birdie. And so I called Alan Parker and I said, could you send some scenes over to Kubrick's office? And then about a month later, I got a script through the mail slot. And I think it's important to say that it said, hello, my name is Stanley Kubrick. I'm a film director. That was the first line in the letter. Because one should never assume, even if you're one of the most famous directors to ever get behind a motion picture camera, you should never assume, and you should say, my name is Stanley Kubrick, I'm a film director.
I'd never heard that before. Yeah. That's great.
You don't want to assume, right, that somebody knows who you are.
Did you, that makes me think of, did you ever see the documentary called Boxes about the London Times guy, and he found the severed head of the sniper in a box, and it freaked him out. Because my favorite part of that story, and I don't mean to usurp an interview, but I have to tell you this, which was what cracked me up, was he was there with Leon, Vivian, and Jan Harlan, and they gave him full access to look at everything on the estate. And this is in the year 2000, less than a year after he passed, because they wanted to curtail all of these rumors about Stanley. He didn't care, but we don't want his reputation to be like this, so they're trying to fix it. And one of the things he asked was they found all these file folders of all these, what they called, from fans, and they had one whole section called crank letters. And he goes, did Stanley ever write back? And it's like, no, never. And as he's looking through the records, he found letters Stanley wrote them. And one of the guys was from Toledo, Ohio, who wrote a 9-page dissertation on what he thought 2001: A Space Odyssey meant. Stanley wrote back, very interesting theory. Stanley Kubrick, he put that in the mail to this guy who still has the letter. It was in the documentary. But it's like, how mercurial is that? Just ignore everything he said. And just an interesting theory, Stanley Kubrick. That seems to me like he has a real sense of humor that people didn't realize.
I told him I figured out what 2001: A Space Odyssey was. He goes, really? What's it about? He wanted to hear what I had to say. I said, you're born, life sucks, and you die. And he got so angry at me because that's not what it's about.
But would he tell you?
No. No.
But he still wouldn't tell you about it.
But,
awesome.
but to say that that's what the movie's about, you're born, life sucks, and you die, he didn't appreciate that.
So let's talk about your personal collaboration with him. What was that like? Because I remember from the book, one of the things you talked about was it felt like the greatest relationship in the world, but then halfway through shooting, he starts talking to the other actors and you felt a little left out. What was?
Well, I just got jealous. I didn't feel left out. I just felt like, because I was the only guy that got invited in the trailer to have coffee and discussion. And then, that began to change. And, it wasn't, the relationship didn't go south until I talk about in the diary, the early part. We were having coffee in the trailer and he said, I have this thing, this no bad ideas rule. I said, what do you mean? He goes, if I suggest something and you don't like it, don't say that's stupid or that wouldn't work. Say, oh, that's interesting, let me think about it. Or offer an alternative suggestion. And I said, oh, I love this no bad ideas rule. And then, and so we lived by that while we were making the film until I broke the rule. And he kept asking me about the end of the film. And in the script, Private Joker died during the Mickey Mouse March when they're singing Mickey Mouse. The field starts to explode, bombs start dropping out of the sky. And the voiceover was something like, your feet tell your brain to pick your body up and to run from these things that are pursuing you. And then my thoughts drift back to Mary Jane Rottencrotch. And you start seeing Private Joker as a little boy running, and then Joker as a soldier, as a Marine in that field, and then the little boy cutting back and forth until the little boy pretends he's been shot, and then Private Joker is being shot. And it was a freeze frame like the famous Kappa photograph from the Spanish Civil War, where you catch the moment in the person in the moment of their death. And Stanley said, what do you think about the end of the film? And I said, it's great. It shows the tragedy of war, the loss of youth, you know, that everything that this guy had been trained to survive fails and he's killed. He said, well, keep thinking about it. And about every week and a half, Stanley would say, what about the end of the film? You've been thinking, yeah, Stanley, I just think it's really great. You know, it's so sad. And he said, well, keep thinking about it. And then one day, Leon came to get me and told me to come to Stanley's trailer. And there were 3 actors in the trailer. It was Adam Baldwin, Arliss Howard, and Kevin Major Howard. And they all had alternative endings. He says, Matthew, you know, I've been asking you for weeks about the end of the film, and you always say it's good, but I just asked these 3 guys, and they all have alternative endings. And then they proceeded to tell their endings, all of which involved their parts getting bigger. And of course, you know, right? And I broke the rule. I said, well, Stanley, you could shoot each of them, and then you'd realize how stupid they are, and you'd reshoot them like you have the rest of the fucking movie. And I couldn't even believe that had come out of my mouth. I wish that I could have reached and grabbed the words before they got in Stanley's ears. And he looked at me like he was going to kill me. And I picked up my M16 and my helmet and went out the door and went back to my trailer, fully thinking I'm going to be fired. He's going to fire me. And then Leon came and knocked at the door. He said, you better get to set. Stanley's really pissed off. And so I get there. And you know, he's a Jewish boy from the Bronx in New York. And one of the things that Americans don't say, excuse me, I'm going to swear. The British use a word that begins with C and ends in T. Yeah. And so Stanley started calling me a miserable cunt because I broke the rule, you know. And I did everything I could to get back on his good side. I was making jokes and telling him stories and stuff. He wasn't having it. And then one day, about 3-4 weeks later, he said, okay, this is what we're doing. We're shooting this and we're doing that. And have you been thinking about the end of the film? And I said, yeah, Stanley, I have. And I hadn't been. I just was going to improvise an answer right now. I said, I have. He should live. He said, what? I said, he should live. He should go through boot camp and have the guy that's trying to teach him how to survive in a combat situation get shot and killed in a toilet. He should go through boot camp. And the guy that he's trying to help get through boot camp should stick an M14 in his mouth and blow his brains out all over the bathroom. He should live. He should come to Vietnam and have the one guy that he knows from boot camp die in his arms. He should go to Vietnam and have to stand over a young Vietnamese girl who's bleeding to death and begging him to end her life. And he takes it. I said, he should live, Stanley, because that's the real horror of war, having to spend the rest of your life with that in your head. And Stanley leaned into me and he said, that's the end of the picture.
And it is.
Yeah. That one's hard to find.
Oh, I know. Extremely hard. The Short Timers one?
Because I tried to do an audiobook and the family won't even talk to me because he killed himself. Gus took his life. And when the film was coming out, there was interest in Gus Hasford. People wanted to talk to him. And somebody got into his house and they saw he had like 50,000 books. So what he would do, if he was here in Columbus, he would go to the library and get a library card, and go through the books, look for first editions, check them out. So he had this incredible collection of first editions. And when the Academy, when all that shit's happening, everybody's looking for ways to discredit you, because it's about money. It's not about awards anymore, especially now.
It's really bad
when
now.
we were 10, 15 years old, the Academy was a little bit different, but now it's so competitive. And they spend millions of dollars to get people nominated. So they were looking for dirt on Gus Hasford. And they found out about these libraries, these books that he checked out. And they arrested him. And Kubrick called up and he said, when somebody, because he knew that he was suffering with post-traumatic stress, he said, when somebody checks out a book and doesn't return it, there's a fine.
Not a
You don't put
criminal
the
sentence.
fucking guy in prison or in jail. So I will pay the fine. Stanley was going to pay all the book fines, which maybe would have added up to $10,000 or something. And Gus killed himself.
Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah.
Kubrick movies are genius because every decade they mean entirely different to your perspective as you get older. And I'm watching it last night. Of course, that futility, everything about it just hit me completely different. But more importantly, I did notice one bit of trivia, which is towards the end, Arliss Howard's on the radio. That's Stanley's voice, isn't it?
Request immediate tank support. Over.
Roger, understand. I'll see what I can do. Over.
Roger.
I think he's also in, maybe one of the voices in talking to Slim Pickens in
Dr.
Strangelove. I think that's him. I think it's him on the other side of the radio talking to, who's the other fellow that passed away? James Earl Jones.
Yeah, James Earl Jones was the pilot very early in his career. So, on average, how many takes did you do on most things?
We stopped measuring by numbers of takes and we say numbers of weeks. So there's a scene, when Arliss Howard's talking to Stanley on the radio, trying to order tanks to come into fire, that we called that the wall, when we're at the wall. And when I come over from the point, I say, what's the matter? Are we lost? And he says, shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And then they send 8-ball. The wall, that sequence, we were there for a month.
A month?
A month. Yeah.
So roughly how long was principal photography?
20 months.
20 months, almost 2 full years.
Yeah, I was in England for almost 2 years.
So I believe it was Vincent D'Onofrio said that you both got married, conceived your child, and your child was born all during principal photography.
No, I was married. I was already
You
married.
were already married.
But my child was born, Chernobyl happened, my father had a heart attack, my manager died. Yeah, it was a lot. If you look at that photograph there where I have the mask on, I'm wearing the mask because it was so toxic. The ground at Beckton Gas Works was cobalt blue. And when they developed that land, they had to scrape off the first foot of soil because there were about 28 known carcinogens in the soil. So we were breathing that all the time. It wasn't so bad when we were in the open air, but then they scooped up a bunch of it and dumped it on the stage at Pinewood Studios. And we were breathing. You see how dirty the mask is. That's the dust that was on the set. And they were lighting the scene with fire. So I think that scene with her was almost a month. Yeah, I went to Italy. There's a picture of me. With Madonna, in the poster, and I talk about it because they changed the name of Vision Quest to Pazzo per Te, Crazy for You. So I had flown to Italy to meet the Taviani brothers for a movie to do right after Full Metal Jacket, and they said, "When are you supposed to finish?" And I said, "Well, on paper, in like 2 weeks." And they said, "Okay, we'll wait." And so a week went by, and they said, "How are you doing?" I said, "We're still 2 weeks." And they said, "Okay, we'll push another week." And then a week went by. "Where are you?" I said, "We're still 2 weeks." It was the longest 2 weeks of my life, is the point. It was almost three months and the Taviani brothers passed, and I lost the job.
Well, By the way, I did love Vision Quest. That's one of my high school movies forever.
It's a good film.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
I thought Ronnie Cox had just, what was the actor that had the mohawk in there? He was from 16 Candles.
Yeah, Michael Schofling.
That's him. He was,
Cooch.
yeah, he's missing from
He stopped
all that
acting.
nostalgia. He did?
Yeah, he very shortly after. I don't think he was in the business for more than 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
He moved back to Pennsylvania, and I think he makes furniture.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So just because of time, I'm going to skip ahead to kind of like, you've had kind of a second renaissance starting in 2012 with Dark Knight Rises, another master filmmaker you got to work with.
So yeah, we worked together twice now. I did Oppenheimer with him and Dark Knight, and yeah, I mean there's a whole bunch of really great directors in between. John Schlesinger with Pacific Heights, Michael Caton Jones and Memphis Belle.
Yeah, Memphis Belle is an amazing film.
Yeah, you
got to work with Sean Astin on that too, and Harry Connick Jr.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the Duffer Brothers, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, what genius to cast like an 80s icon like yourself and Winona Ryder. No, it's true. Yeah. But it was genius. But I had a question about that, which was kind of the accent you put on. Where did that come from for Stranger Things, playing Papa?
I just thought it would be interesting if you didn't know where he was from, so I just made my R's soft, which kind of is, Germans don't pronounce R's. So Hitler would be Hitler, the R's are soft. It's why the British have a soft R, because the royal families are Germans. So the RP, royal pronunciation, that when you're learning to do a British accent, you just make your R's soft. It's the first thing, you go through the script and cross out all the R's. And so I didn't make him full-on German or British. I just made his R's soft. So
because it's a unique accent. Because you can't play. You're thinking, where's that at? Is that like mid-Atlantic? What is it? Like, it's a little, I can't put my finger on it. I thought
that's good. That was my intention. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's such a great role.
It is, yeah. And it was wonderful that the Duffers allowed me to confuse the audience with what is his intention. Does he love the children? Is he a masochist? I think that the most fascinating thing that was left out of the story is, how did Dr. Brenner get that job? How do you go to the government and apply for that job? I'm going to get these kids. We're going to go into some weird laboratory
and experiment on them.
Experiment, yeah.
Yeah, the interesting thing was, did you know at the end of the first season that you were coming back?
Well, no. I don't think the Duffers knew. I don't think they had that was his name, the guy that did Breaking Bad.
Vince Gilligan.
Gilligan. He had the whole thing planned out.
With some minor changes.
With some minor
Jesse was supposed to die at the end of the first season.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. But
I didn't know
the production staff and the writers fell in love with him and begged him not to kill him off.
Yeah, that's funny. Alan Parker wanted to kill Birdie at the end of the film. He wanted him to jump off the roof and be dead. And what was it? TriStar Pictures and Alan Parker's family said, please don't kill Birdie. We love Birdie. Don't kill Birdie. And so
talked him out of it, right?
Well, it was it's a long story to explain how Birdie didn't die, but that's another story for another podcast.
Well, we didn't talk about Lee Ermey much. I mean, just a genius. So, is it true you didn't have much interaction with him before the shoot?
No, Arlie was there to be a technical advisor on the film, and Tim Colceri, who's the door gunner who's shooting women and children, he was supposed to be the drill instructor. And it was kind of unfair. And there's a movie that Bette Davis made called All About Eve, about a young actress trying to take the role of the older actress. She was assistant and everything, admired her and everything. So Arlie, he was always saying that he should be playing the role, this role, nobody could do this better than me. And Tim Colceri had to audition all the kids that were going to be in the boot camp. Because we were shooting Vietnam and then boot camp, Stanley told Tim Colceri to go practice your lines and audition all of the kids that were going to be in boot camp. So Tim Colceri would do it, and he'd do it for an hour, and he'd say, okay, I'm gonna stop because I'm blowing my voice out. And he would go kind of half speed because he wasn't performing. And then he'd stop, but there was still 20 guys that needed to be auditioned. So Ermey would say, I'll do it. And he would step in and he would go balls out, screaming and yelling, not doing the script, but doing dialogue from when he was in boot camp, and saying, you're the kind of guy that'd fuck a guy in the ass and not even have the goddamn common courtesy to give him a reach around.
Which apparently, the first time he heard it, Stanley goes, wait, what does that mean?
You had to get a mental picture of what it was. Yeah. Yeah. So, when Stanley was looking at the daily or the videotape of Tim Colceri and then Ermey coming in. So Tim Colceri was performing here at this level and Arliss was here. There was no way that Stanley couldn't look at Arliss and go, I got to use this guy. So, but he felt bad about it and he cast Tim to be the door gunner. And poor Tim Colceri, he would have done a great job. And it would have been really different because he kind of looks like Tony Curtis, a handsome guy. And he's got a really wicked sense of humor. It would have been very different. It would have been. So,
and you got Vincent in the movie, right? Or how did you help Vincent get in?
I would never say I got Vincent in the movie. That, in life, somebody can open a door for you for an opportunity, but you have to walk in the room and.
Well, it's not like it was a favor. He earned it very well with that part.
I had met Vince at an audition for a silly movie that I ended up getting cast and Vince didn't. It's called Private School. Huh? And my career took off. I'd done an Army movie with Robert Altman, Streamers, won the Best Actor prize at the Venice Film Festival, Private School, Vision Quest, Mrs. Soulful, Birdie, and now I'm walking down the street in New York City and I see Vince as a bouncer working at the Hard Rock Cafe. And he goes, oh man, look at you, you're doing so well. And look at me, I'm a bouncer, I'm a loser. And I said, no, you're not. I said, you gotta keep working. You gotta keep your head up, keep manifesting the positive. And I said, and if an opportunity comes up, I'm gonna throw your name in the ring. He goes, oh, thank you. And so I'm in England, we're shooting Vietnam. And Stanley says to me, I'm really pleased with everybody that I have, but I can't find someone to play Pyle for the boot camp. And I said, I got somebody. I said, he's not heavy, and he's not Southern, because he was supposed to be a Southern boy, Private Pyle, Gomer Pyle. And I'm sure that he can gain weight and do a Southern accent. He said, well, have him audition. So I called Vince, and he goes, no way. I said, no, you don't have the job. You got to go through the process now. So he auditioned and Stanley said, he's really good. Do you think he'll put the weight on? I said, I'm sure he will. So then Vince he didn't have the job. Stanley kept making him gain weight and gain weight and gain weight. So it was like, 2 months of eating before Stanley gave him the job. He kept making him audition.
Because people don't realize he was in that movie, Adventures of Babysitting, playing Thor. And he had that frame, and he went from that to Private Pyle. Most people don't even recognize him.
Didn't he do it after?
I don't know if it was before. That was 86.
I think he lost all the weight and trimmed down.
He went from Pyle back to that?
Yeah, Mystic Pizza and Adventures in Baby. It was after.
So it was after, okay.
Yeah, and I remember Stanley saying, I don't know why he wants to be thin. He's not a leading man. He said, as long as he's heavy, he'll work.
Sadly,
Vince, I didn't mean.
Sadly, he did work more when he was heavier later in life.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's a national treasure. But the one who never gets mentioned is Arliss Howard.
Yeah, Arliss is terrific.
He is one of my favorite character actors of all time. Like his performance in Tequila Sunrise.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite acting performances ever.
Yeah.
And he just does not get enough props. And watching the movie again last night, I'm like, this is phenomenal what he does here.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was phenomenal.
It was phenomenal. He took the time for everything.
He signed my book.
Yes.
And then he read from the afterword himself.
Yeah. He read his favorite part of the book.
Oh, you got
my first edition.
Do you know what number it is?
I'd have to look inside, but it's from the first set.
I'll show you. There's only one set because I wanted to make a collector's item. Look here. Limited edition, 14,668. 65? Oh, yeah, there will never be any more. I've seen the book for sale for about $8,000.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. This is my favorite part of the book, is the afterword. He said, we got back. We was all out of breath. The first thing they did was they started laughing. I'm looking at these guys, and then I'm laughing with them. That's when you find out that laughing at death is laughing that you made it alive. You faced it. You dealt with it and survived. All of a sudden, it's a joke. August 2005. These words could have been taken from Gus Hasford's The Short Timers or Michael Hare's Dispatches. These words could have been written or spoken by me as Private Joker. They could have slipped foolishly from my mouth when describing my experience in London. But these words are about real survival spoken by a soldier fortunate enough to have escaped death while serving his country. People often compare moments in life, particularly sporting events, to war, battle, combat. It is a gross exaggeration to compare any aspect of filming to war. War is the destruction of life. It continues to destroy long after the words are fired, after the shots are fired. Unable to escape the real psychological scars, young men and women grow old and carry their memories to their graves. I participated in making what some have said is the greatest war film ever made, an opinion. There have been a couple of spectacular war films made since Full Metal Jacket, and quite a few before it were pretty great. I'm just happy that I was part of this one for several reasons. The first is that I had the luxury to work on a film that strived toward nuance rather than cliche. The characters in the movie are not cutouts. Private Pyle is both victim and monster. Sergeant Hartman is both sadist and savior. Joker is both lost and found, as was I. The second is that my experience on the set gave me the luxury of time to reflect on life, to stop and survey my situation. I saw how time slips through and from our hands. I realized this when thousands of people were killed in Chernobyl. I felt it through the death of Chuck Guinness and the heart attack of my father. I learned what love is through the passions of Carrie and the birth of our son. Third is that having acted in 3 films that banged away at the subject of Vietnam, I stopped trying to find out why we were fighting in Southeast Asia. The question can never be answered. There is no justification, no explanation that doesn't contradict another explanation. There is simply evil in the world, and sadly, a macabre, voyeuristic love of war within too many. War is over, said John Lennon, if you want it. The important part was the second sentence. The last reason is, of course, because of Stanley, but I can't tell you more than I already have. That would be showing my hand.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I bought that book 20 years ago when it first came out. I'm a huge Stanley Kubrick fan, and that's all I wanted to talk about. And luckily, he seemed to enjoy talking about this.
I think we could have went on for another hour.
Easily. Just one of the nicest guys, and he just...
I mean, his memories of everything, obviously the photos help keep, his photographs and the story of why he was allowed to
even take the photos.
Yes, man, it's like it was yesterday for him. He's all over it.